Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Donovan. I am 33 years old, and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I work as an operations manager for a regional freight company, which means most of my days are schedules, delays, drivers, warehouse calls, and fixing problems before they become expensive. I like that kind of work because it made sense to me. Something was wrong, you found it, you handled it, and then you moved on. For a long time, I thought my relationship worked the same way. My ex-girlfriend, Ariel, was 29. We had been together a little over 3 years, and for most of that time, I believed we were moving toward a life that made sense. Not flashy, not theatrical, just solid. She had been living in my townhouse for the last 10 months. We had routines that felt real enough to build on. Sunday coffee runs, Thursday takeout on the couch, a trip to Charleston every fall. She knew how I liked the thermostat set when I slept. I knew exactly how she took her coffee when she had a bad day. Those were the details I trusted. Those were the details that made me think I was loved for who I was, not for what I could stage. The reason what happened hurt so much was not because Ariel had always acted shallow. It was because she had not. That was the part that stayed with me. Early on, she had seemed almost relieved by my normal life. She used to tell me that what she liked about me was how steady I was. She said she never had a guess where she stood with me. Once, maybe 6 months into dating, we were at a crowded rooftop bar downtown for one of her friend's birthdays, and she leaned close and said she was tired of people who treated everything like an audition. She said she wanted something private, something real, something that still meant something when nobody was watching. I remember that clearly because I had agreed with her so completely that I felt lucky. Another time, around Christmas the year before all of this fell apart, she curled up against me on my couch while some terrible holiday movie played in the background and said that when she got married someday, she did not care about impressing strangers. She said she cared about feeling safe, chosen, and respected. Those words mattered to me. I stored them. I built my picture of her around them. So when the truth came out, it did not feel like I had simply learned she liked expensive jewelry. It felt like I had been standing on a floor that looked solid until it gave way under me. By the spring, everything happened. I had already bought a ring. It was not cheap, and it was not careless. I had spent $7,800 on an oval diamond with a platinum band from a jeweler in North Hills. I am only giving that number because it matters to the story. I was not playing around. I had been saving quietly for months. I ate out less. I passed on a weekend trip with friends. I sold an old guitar that mostly sat in its case. None of that felt like sacrifice at the time. It felt good. It felt adult. I thought I was buying the beginning of my marriage, and I was happy to do it. I had the proposal plan, too. A cabin in Asheville for the second weekend of May. Dinner overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. A photographer booked to be nearby without making it obvious. I had even called Ariel's mother, Yvette, because she had always treated me kindly, and I thought she would appreciate hearing it from me first. She got emotional on the phone. She told me she was thrilled. She said Ariel was going to lose her mind in the best way. She was only half right. Looking back, there were smaller signs I dismissed because I already believe in the relationship. That is the embarrassing part. Once or twice, Ariel had made comments that I let slide because they were wrapped in a smile or hidden inside group conversations. She would show me engagement photos on social media and say things like, "This is how you do it," but then laugh and say she was kidding. She had opinions about venues she claimed not to care about. She had strong reactions to rings posted online by women she did not even know. At the time, I read all of that as normal noise, the kind of silly fantasy talk people drift into because weddings are everywhere and social media turns everything into a performance. But there is a difference between having opinions and revealing your values. I did not understand that yet. I thought she was just talking. I thought the woman who said she wanted sincerity more than spectacle was still the real one, and the rest was fluff. I gave the better version of her more weight because that was the version I wanted to marry. Everything shifted at her sister Cameron's birthday dinner. We were at a steakhouse in downtown Raleigh with Cameron, 2 of Ariel's friends, Cameron's boyfriend, and one other couple I barely knew. It was one of those dinners where nobody can just eat. Everything has to become a discussion or a performance. The conversation drifted to engagements because one of Cameron's coworkers had just gotten a 4-carat ring, and suddenly that was all anybody cared about. Phones came out. Pictures started moving around the table. There was a lot of exaggerated shock, a lot of laughter, a lot of comments that sounded half admiring and half competitive. Then Cameron nudged Ariel and asked what kind of ring she expected when her time came. It should have been harmless. It should have been one of those noisy table moments that vanishes as soon as the breadbasket comes back. Instead, it became the moment my relationship split open. Ariel did not hesitate. She said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "If the ring is not huge, do not propose." Everybody laughed except me. She kept going because she had an audience now, and I could see it on her face. She said she was not posting some tiny ring online just so people could zoom in and pity her. She said if a man really knew his woman was the one, he would make it obvious. She said she had standards, and she was not going to apologize for them. Cameron jumped in right behind her and said Ariel deserved something that turned heads. One of the friends said, "Exactly," in that tone people use when they want to turn a thoughtless comment into a whole philosophy. Somebody tapped a glass with a fork. Everyone was smiling. I was sitting there with a ring already bought, a proposal already planned, and the sudden sick realization that the woman I loved was talking about commitment like a public grade. Not a promise, not a life, a grade. Something to display so other people could approve of it. I looked at her and said, "Then there will not be one." The table went quiet for a beat. Not long, just long enough for the words to land. Ariel rolled her eyes almost immediately and told everyone I was being dramatic. That was part of what stung. She did not look embarrassed by what she had said. She looked annoyed that I had interrupted the tone she was trying to set. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I did not start listing all the private, loving, sincere things she had told me over the past 3 years and asked how this fit with any of them. I pulled out my phone, sent my part of the bill to Cameron's boyfriend, put cash on the table for the tip, and stood up. Ariel asked where I was going in that flat, irritated voice she used when she thought I was making her social life inconvenient. I told her she could get a ride home with Cameron. Then I left. I remember the walk to my car more clearly than the drive. My face felt hot, but my mind felt cold. Not angry yet. Clear. There is a moment when humiliation changes shape and becomes information. That was what was happening to me. By the time I got home, she had already sent 6 texts. The first one said, "Are you seriously acting weird over a joke?" The second said, "You know I did not mean it like that." The third was a Pinterest board link. The fourth was a screenshot of a ring style she liked. The fifth said, "For the record, at least 3 carats if it is oval, and nothing yellow gold." The sixth said, "Also, no lazy proposal at some chain restaurant. If you're going to do it right." I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at those messages for a long time. That was the moment the whole thing clicked into place. The dinner comment was not the mistake. The text proved that. The dinner comment was the truth escaping in public. Then, instead of being ashamed, she followed it with specifications. Not a conversation. Not an apology. Specifications. She did not say she was sorry for disrespecting me. She did not say she had gotten carried away. She sent me a board, a carat minimum, and a style guide as if I had failed a briefing. I replied with one line. "Then there will not be one." She wrote back, "Oh my God, relax." I did not answer. The next morning, I took the ring back. I lost $640 on the restocking fee. I lost another $310 on the cabin deposit. I lost the photographer's cancellation fee, too. It bothered me, but only in the way any expensive mistake would bother somebody. The bigger pain was standing there at the jeweler, knowing I had almost knelt in front of a woman who had just shown me exactly how she measured love when people were watching. The manager asked if everything was all right, and I told her the proposal was off. She gave me the kind of sympathetic look that made me want to get out of there as fast as possible. I drove home with the empty ring box in my passenger seat and felt stupid in a way that had nothing to do with money. Not because I'd want to get married, because I had missed what was in front of me. Because I had spent 3 years believing that the woman beside me and the woman performing for approval were the same person, and they were not. That evening I ended it. No speech, no shouting, no dramatic account of every insult she had ever delivered disguised as humor. She was standing at the kitchen counter when I told her I had been planning to propose. For the first time since the dinner, something real crossed her face. Shock first, then something else that looked too quick to be guilt and too calculating to be grief. I told her comments, and then the messages afterward, Made it clear we were not building the same kind of future. I said I want her out of the townhouse by the end of the week. At first, she laughed in my face. Actually laughed. She said I was being ridiculous. She said every woman talks about rings. She said all I had done was prove that I was insecure and afraid of commitment. That almost made me smile because the ring had already existed. The cabin had already been booked. Her mother had already cried on the phone. I told her none of that changed what she had revealed. Then the tears started. Fast, loud, angry tears. Not the kind that come from heartbreak. The kind that come from losing control of a situation you thought you were running. She kept trying different versions of the same argument. She said I was punishing her for having preferences. She said I was twisting one bad moment into a personality flaw. She said I should have known she was joking because she would never actually reject a proposal over ring size. But every time she said that, all I could think about were those messages. At least 3 carats. Nothing yellow gold. Do it right. A joke does not need a blueprint. A joke does not recruit a Pinterest board. A joke does not come with sister-supported pressure behind it. I told her she could stay with Cameron for a few days and come back Saturday between noon and 2 for the rest of her things. She stood there staring at me as if she expected me to soften if she waited long enough. I did not. I got out 2 duffel bags and a stack of boxes and started packing the essentials she would need immediately. Clothes, shoes, makeup, her laptop, toiletries, the little white noise machine she liked because she could not sleep without it. Her skincare went into a small cooler bag because some of it needed to stay cold. I was still being careful with her things while she was calling me pathetic. That detail matters because it was the last proof I needed that I was not the one acting out of impulse. She left around midnight, carrying 2 bags and a face full of fury. She called me cold. She called me weak. She said I would regret this the moment I calmed down and thought about what I was throwing away. The strange thing was that I was calm. Calmer than I had been at dinner. Calmer than I had been when I read the texts. She was the one in chaos, and I think that confused her. She wanted a fight. She wanted tears. She wanted me to say something big and wounded that she could use later as proof I had overreacted. Instead, I gave her clear instructions and a deadline. After she left, the house felt hollow for about 10 minutes. Then it felt quiet. I slept 8 straight hours. That line would sound dramatic if I had not lived it. For months, even before the breakup, I had been dealing with a low-grade tension that comes from always trying to manage the emotional weather around somebody else. Not screaming fights, not open dysfunction, just enough volatility that part of my mind stayed awake longer than it should have. That night it did not. The second day after the breakup, the outside pressure started. Cameron texted first. She said I was humiliating Ariel over something stupid. She said if I really loved her, I would know she had been joking and I would stop making her pay for one careless comment. I replied once. I wrote, she did not joke. She gave me a minimum carat size and proposal requirements afterward. Then I blocked her. Later that same day, one of Ariel's friends, Taryn, tried from an unknown number. Slightly softer tone. Same message underneath it. Ariel was devastated. Ariel was barely eating. Ariel could not believe I had destroyed a 3-year relationship over one stupid line at dinner. I did not respond. The pattern was already obvious. Nobody was asking what she had actually done. They were asking me to stop reacting to it, because the truth made her look bad. That was when I realized this was not just a disagreement about taste. Ariel's entire defense depended on reducing public humiliation, entitlement, and pressure into just a ring. That was the trick. Strip away the meaning, and I looked cruel. Keep the meaning intact, and she looked exactly like what she had shown herself to be. A day after that, the jeweler called me. The manager said Ariel had come into the store asking questions about the ring tied to my account. She wanted to know whether it had been resized, whether it was still there, whether there had been some misunderstanding. The manager told me Ariel had been persistent enough that the staff became uncomfortable discussing anything connected to a purchase under my name. So they checked the account notes and called me. That told me more than Ariel ever meant to reveal. First, she had not believed I had really bought a ring until she went looking for proof. Second, once she understood it had been real, the whole situation changed in her mind. The pain of losing me had not sent her to the store. The pain of realizing there had been an actual ring and that she had talked herself out of it in public had sent her there. That was the moment my last bit of doubt died. If she had cared about the relationship itself, The loss of me should have been enough. Instead, she needed confirmation that she had lost the performance, too. A few hours later, she emailed me with the subject line, "I did not know you already bought it." That was not an apology. It was a complaint disguised as regret. The body of the email was full of lines like, "You should have told me sooner," and "Now you made this bigger than it needed to be," and "If I had known where your head was, this would have gone differently." Nothing in it acknowledged the cruelty of what she had said or how publicly she had said it. The entire message treated the problem like a timing issue, as if her behavior only counted if she knew there was already a ring in motion, as if disrespect becomes harmless when the other person has not spent the money yet. I did not reply to that, either. Then Yvette called. I expected anger, maybe disappointment. Instead, she sounded tired before she even started speaking. She asked me what Ariel had said exactly. I told her word for word. Then I forwarded the screenshot of the Pinterest board and the 3-carat message. There was a long silence. Finally, Yvette exhaled and said, very softly, "So that is who she was being." I asked what she meant. She said Ariel had always had a part of herself that cared too much about appearances, but she had hoped age and real love would soften it. Then she apologized to me. Not on Ariel's behalf, just honestly. She said a proposal should make two people feel closer, not make one person feel measured. That sentence stayed with me because it was simple and true. Ariel, meanwhile, was getting worse. She started posting vague quotes online about fragile men and women being punished for having standards. A coworker of mine, named Damon, saw one of them because his wife followed Taryn, and the whole thing had started spilling across people who had nothing to do with it. At work, Damon asked if I was all right. I gave him the truth in about 30 seconds. He listened, blinked twice, and said, "You got out early." That was the cleanest summary anybody gave me. Saturday came, which meant pickup day. Ariel texted at 11:40 that morning saying she wanted to come alone so we could talk like adults. I wrote back, "No, garage pickup only." At 12:15, my porch camera showed Ariel and Cameron walking up with coffees in their hands like they were arriving for some emotional reset scene they had rehearsed on the drive over. Ariel knocked, rang the bell, fixed her hair in the reflection of the glass, then knocked again. I watched it on my phone from the living room and did not open the door. Through the speaker, I told her boxes were in the garage and the code would be changed after pickup. That was when she started crying for real. Not the angry, loud crying from the kitchen. This was messy and desperate, but even then the words told on her. She kept saying, "I cannot believe you're doing this over a ring. Not over public disrespect. Not over treating a proposal like a transaction in front of people who were supposed to matter to us. Not over following it with instructions and social pressure. Just a ring." Cameron loaded the boxes in silence after that. She did not have much to say anymore. I think even she understood that Ariel's framing had finally stopped working. Once the performance had no audience inside the house and no access to me, it looked smaller, meaner, more embarrassing. After they left, the townhouse felt lighter. Not happy, just clear. The kind of clear you get after a storm has moved through and taken half the branches with it. Over the next couple of weeks, I fell back into pieces of my life I had been neglecting. I got back in the gym. I finished a project certification course I had been dragging out. I took dinner over to my brother's house one Friday and realized I had gone a full evening without checking my phone every few minutes to make sure nobody was angry with me. Peace does not always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up as the absence of tension you stopped noticing. About 3 weeks later, Cameron called from a number I did not recognize and left a voicemail saying Yvette had collapsed at work and Ariel was trying to reach me because family should still matter. The minute I heard it, something felt wrong. Not emotionally wrong, strategically wrong. I called Yvette directly. She answered on the second ring, perfectly fine, folding laundry at home. I asked whether she had been at work. She said no. I asked whether she had collapsed. Silence. Then a long, exhausted sigh. She said no. She used me, did she not? I told her yes. That was the moment my thinking changed. Up to then, I had been treating the whole thing like a bad breakup with an entitled ex. After that voicemail, it became harassment. There's a line between clinging and manipulation, and she had crossed it by inventing a medical emergency involving her own mother. I saved the voicemail. I backed up the texts. I downloaded the porch footage. I started a folder, not because I wanted revenge, Because I finally understood I was dealing with somebody who would keep escalating as long as she thought emotion could drag me back into the story she preferred. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. Reception called upstairs and said there was a woman in the lobby asking for me who claimed to be my fiancé. Not my ex-girlfriend. My fiancé. That word hit harder than I expected. It was not just inaccurate. It was invasive. It turned a private future I had almost offered into something she felt entitled to keep, wearing publicly, even after she had helped destroy it. I told reception not to send her up and asked security to walk her out. Before she left, she handed the front desk a small gift bag with tissue paper and a note clipped to it. The note said, "We can still have a life we planned." Inside the bag was a cheap ring box from a department store. Empty. That should have been pathetic. Instead, it felt unsettling. She was not trying to reconcile. She was trying to force symbolism back into a situation she had already stripped meaning from. I photographed the note, the bag, and the box. Then I called an attorney my brother had used during a business dispute. His name was Russell. Calm man. Very hard to impress with drama, which was exactly what I needed. Russell sat across from me, flipped through the screenshots, listened to the voicemail, looked at the porch footage, and asked only a handful of questions. Had I responded after the breakup beyond logistics? No. Had I invited any of this contact? No. Did I want her punished, or did I want her gone? Gone. He nodded and said, "Good. Then we keep this simple." He told me the biggest mistake people make with this kind of situation is continuing to argue from hurt when the other person has already moved into strategy. He said Ariel wanted emotional access, whether that came through guilt, anger, pleading, or spectacle. The only winning move was to stop providing it. He drafted a cease and desist letter for $425 and sent it certified mail. That felt strange at first, paying a lawyer to tell someone to leave me alone after a relationship, but it also felt solid, measurable, adult. It was the legal version of the same clarity I had felt walking out of that birthday dinner. This is what happened. This is what it means. This is where the line is now. I thought the letter might settle it. It did not. A week later, I went on a date with a woman named Noelle. I had met her through Damon's wife at a cookout. She was 31, a physical therapist, funny in a quiet way, and easy to talk to because she did not seem to be performing herself at every second. I'm not saying that to make Ariel look worse by contrast. I am saying it because after months of tension and then weeks of fallout, Noelle's ease felt almost suspicious to me at first. We went to a small Italian place in Cary. Nothing expensive, nothing impressive. Good food, shaded patio, easy conversation. Halfway through the appetizer, Ariel appeared beside the railing. To this day, I do not know how she found out. A mutual friend, social media, bad luck, maybe all three. She was wearing a white dress that would have been normal anywhere else, and completely deranged in that setting because of the message it sent. She looked at Noelle, then at me, and said, "So this is why you threw away our future. Not relationship. Future." As if I had canceled a contract instead of reacting to a betrayal, she authored herself. Noelle did not say a word at first. She leaned back and watched. I told Ariel to leave. She ignored me and started crying almost instantly, loud enough that 3 nearby tables turned at once. She said I had promised her forever. She said I had bought a ring and then stolen her life because she made one stupid comment. She said she should be the one wearing white next spring, not sitting alone while I flirted with strangers. The manager came over, then another staff member. Then the whole scene tipped from embarrassing to serious because other guests were now staring and a couple near the entrance had moved inside. Ariel tried to calm down when she realized nobody was falling for the wrong bride version of events, but she had already done enough. The manager told her to leave. She argued. They called the police. By the time officers arrived, she had shifted from sobbing to furious, which only made the whole performance uglier. She got a trespass warning from the restaurant, and I gave a brief statement. On the drive home, Noelle was quiet for maybe a minute. Then she asked, "Was that the ring girl?" I laughed harder than I should have, mostly from relief. That was the first moment the whole nightmare felt smaller than me. The next morning, I found a Venmo request from Ariel for $3,900 with a note. Half the ring since it was mine in spirit. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds because my brain refused to process it at first. Then I screenshotted it and sent it to Russell. He replied 2 minutes later with, "Do not respond." This helps. That request mattered because it stripped away every last soft interpretation people could still pretend to hold. By then, nobody honest could say this was about heartbreak alone. It was not about closure. It was not about being blindsided. It was not about a woman mourning a lost relationship. She was billing me for a fantasy object she had never received because, in her mind, the promise had existed as an entitlement the moment she imagined it. That was one of the ugliest parts of the whole story. She kept trying to turn my private intention into her public property. Russell filed for a protective order that week. He told me not to dramatize anything in court, not to editorialize, and not to underestimate how much judges hate manufactured chaos backed by documentation. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, Ariel made one last push. One morning after the gym, I found a small white jewelry bag tucked under the windshield wiper on my truck. Inside was a fake cubic zirconia ring and a handwritten note that said, "You owe me the life you promised." I did not feel fear when I read it. I felt something colder than that. Final clarity. She was not grieving me. She was still arguing for possession. The life, the ring, the image, the narrative, all of it, in her mind, had been hers the moment she pictured it, and my only role was to deliver. I photographed the bag, the note, and where it had been placed on the truck, then sent those to Russell as well. Yvette texted once during that period, separate from Ariel, to say she was sorry things had gone this far. She also said she had stopped defending behavior she could no longer excuse. I appreciated that more than I answered it. By then, I was learning that one of the healthiest things I had ever done for myself was to stop over-explaining my boundaries to people who benefited from me having none. The hearing was about 6 weeks after the restaurant incident in Wake County. Small courtroom. No drama in the room itself. Only the people who brought it in. Ariel showed up dressed, as if she were trying to project dignity by force. Beige blouse. Soft makeup. Hair pulled back neatly. Cameron sat behind her with a pinched expression that suggested she still thought this might somehow reverse if everyone just said the right emotional thing. Russell arrived, carrying the folder. Screenshots. Voicemail. Porch footage stills. The office incident. The cease and desist letter. The restaurant report. The Venmo request. The gym note. When your life gets reduced to exhibits, it is strange how quickly spectacle starts looking small on paper. Russell told me again to stay brief and factual. Ariel's side leaned hard on words like misunderstanding and closure. That word kept appearing. Closure. As if pretending to be my fiancé in a corporate lobby and billing me for half a ring were just awkward expressions of unfinished feelings. The judge did not seem moved. At one point, the judge held up the Venmo screenshot and read the note aloud. Half the ring since it was mine in spirit. He lowered the paper and looked over his glasses in that specific way older authority figures do when they're trying very hard not to sound as unimpressed as they feel. Then he said, "A proposal is not a debt, and an imagined future is not enforceable property." That was the line of the day, and it deserved to be. He granted a 1-year no-contact order. No calls, no texts, no showing up at my home, workplace, gym, or places she knew I frequented. 300-foot minimum distance. Cameron looked stunned. Ariel looked furious, which was almost more telling than anything else. Not heartbroken, furious, as if she had been denied what was rightfully hers one more time. The order did not feel triumphant when I heard it. It felt quiet, final, administrative almost, which was fitting. Something that had begun with a public performance ended with paperwork and rules because that was the only language left she could not twist into theater. After that, everything finally went still. No new numbers. No more lobby surprises. No more online indirect shots making their way back to me. No more symbolic gifts. Russell told me people like Ariel often stop the moment a courtroom reminds them they are not the central authority in someone else's life. I believed him because silence arrived so completely it almost felt unnatural at first. I kept expecting another attempt, another scene, another message designed to drag me back into defending what had already been obvious for months. It never came. Work got better, too. In January, I was promoted to regional operations lead, which came with a raise and more travel, but the kind that felt earned instead of like something I was hiding behind. Noelle and I kept seeing each other slowly. That mattered. Slowly. There was no rush in me anymore. No need to prove anything. By then, we had been together 4 months. She knew the whole story and treated it the way sane people treat chaos once it has passed, with a mix of disbelief, humor, and healthy distance. One night she laughed about the phrase "mine in spirit" for so long she had tears in her eyes, and for the first time I heard that line as ridiculous before I heard it as invasive. Yvette texted me once after the hearing. Just once. She said she was sorry for all of it and that I deserved better. I did not respond because I did not need to, but I appreciated it. I also appreciated what her silence represented after that. She did not keep trying to mediate. She did not ask me to soften. She did not try to rehabilitate Ariel in my eyes. That restraint felt respectful. More respectful, honestly, than much of what I had lived with during the relationship and ignore because it came wrapped in charm and chemistry. That is something I understand better now. Betrayal is not always loud at first. Sometimes it starts as a value mismatch you excuse, because the person can still say beautiful things in private. Ariel knew how to sound sincere. That was part of what made this so ugly. She knew the language of intimacy. She knew how to talk about safety, partnership, respect, and choosing each other over appearances. She just did not live by any of it when being watched became part of the equation. That is really what the breakup came down to. Ariel did not want a proposal in the way I meant it. She wanted the photo, the close-up, the comments, the envy, the proof. She wanted the version of commitment that could be displayed and admired. I wanted a marriage. Those are not the same thing, and I do not think people talk enough about how different they are. A person can say all the right things about love and still reveal, at exactly the wrong moment, that what matters most to them is how love looks from the outside. That is the wound she actually caused. Not offense over jewelry. Not fear of commitment. She took something I'd been building quietly and seriously and dragged it into a public value system where its worth depended on whether strangers would be impressed. She made me feel smaller in the exact moment I had been preparing to choose her in the biggest way I knew how. Once I saw that clearly, I cannot unsee it. That was why there was no repairing it. Not because she liked expensive things, because she exposed what expensive things meant to her. If she had come home after that dinner and said, "I embarrass you. I sounded awful. I got caught up in trying to impress people, and I am ashamed," maybe I would be telling a different story. If the text had been remorse instead of specifications, maybe the version of her I loved would have had somewhere to stand. But she did not do that. She doubled down. Then she escalated. Then she tried to rewrite. Then she tried to invoice me for the fantasy. Every step after the dinner stripped away another layer of doubt, until the woman I thought I loved and the woman I was actually dealing with became impossible to confuse. That made leaving painful, but it also made it clean. The hardest breakups are often the ones where love and harm stay tangled together. Mine stopped being that. She made it unmistakable. She kept giving me evidence. She kept making the betrayal easier to name, because she could not stop trying to win a narrative she had already lost. The thing I am most grateful for now is not that I avoided marrying her, although obviously I am. It is that I recognize the difference between hurt pride and broken trust. A lot of people try to shrink what happened into a material disagreement because that framing protected her. It made me sound sensitive and her sound normal. But the ring was never the real issue. The issue was that I learned, in front of other people, that the woman beside me viewed one of the most intimate promises of my life as a public status signal first and a relationship milestone second. Then she confirmed it privately with more detail than I had wanted to imagine. Then she recruited others, lied, manipulated, showed up, and demanded a debt for something she had not earned and did not understand. By the time it was over, the ring itself had almost become irrelevant. What mattered was that she had finally shown me the scoreboard she had been using all along, and I was never going to live happily inside it. Noelle once asked me, a few months after the order went through, what the exact moment was when I knew it was beyond fixing. I told her it was not when Ariel made the comment at dinner. It was not even when I read the Pinterest board and the carrot minimum text. It was the moment I realized she had been given multiple chances to understand the hurt she caused, And every single time she treated the real problem like an inconvenience to her image. That was the pattern. At the steakhouse, she made me smaller in front of table. Afterward, she sent requirements. During the breakup, she called me scared of commitment. Through her friends, she reduced me to overreacting. At the jeweler, she chased proof. In the email, she complained about timing. At my office, she claimed a title she had not earned. At the restaurant, she tried to stage herself as a wrong bride. On Venmo, she turned a proposal into an invoice. In court, she called it closure. The mask did not slip once. It kept slipping because there was no mask left to hold up. That is why the ending feels satisfying to me now. Not because she suffered, because she exposed herself fully enough that I never had to wonder whether I had done the right thing. I still think about the man I was before that dinner sometimes. Not in a sad way, more in a protective way. He had a ring in a box, and a cabin reservation, and a whole future he thought he was walking toward. He was nervous in a hopeful way. He believed he was choosing someone who valued what he valued. I did not feel embarrassed for him anymore. He was sincere. The shame belonged somewhere else. That matters to me. Betrayal has a way of trying to transfer its humiliation onto the person who got hurt by it. For a little while, I let that happen. I felt foolish for not seeing more. But the truth is, I was not stupid. I was trusting. She was the one who took that trust and held it up to a crowd with a price tag attached. The second she did that, something permanent ended in me. Not because she wanted something expensive, because she showed me that what should have been sacred between us had been translated, in her mind, into optics, ranking, and applause. Now, when I think about that night at the steakhouse, I do not replay the embarrassment the way I used to. I think about the clarity that came after. I think about the walk to my car. I think about the text lighting up my phone and how each one made the next step easier. I think about how calm I felt when I packed her things, how quiet the house felt after she left, how quickly peace started returning once I stopped negotiating with disrespect. And I think about the fact that what I almost gave her was real. My intention was real. The ring was real. The future I was preparing to offer was real. She was the one who treated it like a production. She wanted the spectacle. I wanted the life. Those are not interchangeable, and the difference between them is everything. In the end, she lost the narrative she was trying to force, and I escaped something hollow enough to mistake performance for love. That is the cleanest truth I can give it now. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.